All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Conversion Accelerator, how to close 30 to 40% more deals without wasting money on more leads. So my agenda today, this works, is to help you close 30 to 40% more deals without spending more money. And I'd like this to be as interactive as possible. So please do use the chat. I might ask you a couple of questions as we go along. So if you can just mute yourselves if you're not speaking and just use the chat. So the first question I always ask people is this you? So if you're here, you're either going to be the owner or leader of a consulting professional services firm of some description, or you're going to be a senior salesperson. And when I work with technically brilliant professional services firms, the goals are generally all the same. We all want more revenue. We want more profitability. We would like some form of work-life balance rather than working ourselves to the bone. And obviously, we want to make a bigger impact to ourselves, to our clients, and maybe the world at large. Now, having said that, we all know we all work hard. We have great services, and I'm going to assume the clients love what you do. But I'm also going to say that marketing and sales are probably not your forte. And working with technically brilliant firms, the one thing I've noticed is that there's very often no predictable way or system to bring in new clients on demand when you need them. Things tend to be ad hoc. We get really consumed with delivery. We forget to market, and then the projects finish, and then all of a sudden we madly scramble for more work, and the cycle just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. And so when we look at firms and we talk to people, very often, people are frustrated for the same reasons. I don't know about you, but 2025, talking to a lot of people in business, it's been a pretty damn difficult year. Now, that's not to say that everybody has been difficult. There have been people that have been doing really well. There have been people that have been doing really badly, but most people sort of fall somewhere in the middle. And that's because there's a lot of economic uncertainty. There's people aren't spending money. People are risk averse. It's taking longer and longer to get people to make decisions. And every business has competition. And because there's more and more competition, and it's getting easier and easier for people to go into business on some level, especially in a consultancy field, especially if they think that AI is going to solve all of their problems, you can sort of get caught in the commodity trap where you just become another also ran. And the minute your services can't be distinguished from anybody else, the only thing that people can compete with is on price. And that's a big problem. And even when you do have conversations, and you might be doing a lot of social media, you might be putting out blog posts, running Google AdWords, following whatever the latest fad is, TikTok, video, et cetera, and you get people coming in, but they don't stick. So sometimes your pipeline could actually look quite good on paper, but the deals still stall. And the revenue is still unpredictable because you have no actual control over when somebody buys. And if you don't have enough people in the pipeline in the first place, then you're basically stuck when somebody says no or somebody ghosts you, etc. So just put a yes in the chat if you can relate to any of that. Erica says yes. Sandra says yes. Yes, I think just about everybody's going to say yes, aren't they? Yeah. All right. Fair enough. All right. So this is the thing. I reckon, having done this for 25 years, I think there's a lot of flawed thinking going on. And most firms, no matter whether you're a single consultant or you're turning over 5, 10, $15 million, think that they have a lead generation problem. And to some extent, that is true, because without leads, we can't actually convert anybody. But the real problem is actually a conversion problem, and it's costing hundreds of thousands, sometimes more, sometimes less, a year. And when I say a conversion problem, this is what I mean. Because when I talk to people, basically what happens is someone will say, oh, I've got a 30 to 40% conversion rate. When I've got a qualified prospect, I can convert them. The problem is most of the people who come to you raising their hands in some form are not necessarily qualified, or they don't go down the track to becoming a profitable long-term client. Now, I did some research on this, and interestingly enough, I thought, okay, so all these people say that it's 30 to 40%. Is that really true? And the research showed that the actual average conversion rate for a professional services company is somewhere between 2.5% and 3%. And what that means is somebody coming into the top of your funnel in some form, whether they watch a piece of content and they sort of get interested, all the way to someone having a qualified conversation, is only 2.5% to 3%, because most opportunities die between the first inquiry and the decision. And if we could shift that 2.5% to 3% to say 4 or 5%, you'd actually increase your conversion rate from end to end, because this is what really counts, because that's where the money is being spent, to 30 to 40% more business without needing more leads. So rather than waste more money on leads, because every lead costs you money in some form, whether it's hard dollar cost because of advertising, the marketing agency, the content you're putting out, the coffee chats you have, whatever it is, all of these things cost you money. And therefore, if we can increase the conversion rate to a greater percentage, that is the greatest leverage that you could have in your business. So you don't have to answer this in the chat, but if you want to, by all means, on a scale of 1 to 10, would you say you are attracting all the clients that you actually want? And the second part of that question is, how certain are you of, let's just say it's a year from now, now it's already February, but let's just say it's December this year. How certain are you of hitting your sales targets and the financial goals? If you want to put it in the chat, by all means. Otherwise, just put that in the back of your head and say, okay, well, am I really certain? Am I not really certain? Okay, so Jason says, sounds like every other week, anytime from the 20th of the month, 6 out of 10. All right, score, Erica, 5 out of 10, not certain of hitting the sales goals. Okay, so then the next question, of course, if we're not certain, what do we need to do to we can't, to give us the best chance of hitting the goal. Not everything, I'll be honest, not everything that we ever do is going to work. And all marketing on some level is about maths and psychology. And on another level, it's testing stuff, see what works, what doesn't work, and then hone what does work, but never forgetting to keep testing new stuff, because what worked today may not work tomorrow. And a classic example of this would be Google with SEO. A few years ago, they did their massive cull of SEO, and businesses that relied and they were making serious dollars off their SEO and their web pages went nowhere. Nothing. Went off the first couple of pages of Google. Okay. The same thing happens with AdWords. There have been times when Google has just chopped. Same thing has happened with Facebook. And what that says is that you cannot rely on any one system or any one method of bringing in leads. And that also says that the most dangerous number in business is one client, one marketing system, one way of dealing with people. It's the most dangerous number that you can have, because one gives you no choice. So working with people, our goal is to help you consistently grow your business and close more deals from the current leads that you have. And obviously, predictably increase the revenue and profitability. And this is the key. Now, I know some of you are in sales, and that's fine. And I've got a couple of suggestions for you down the track. But the number of organizations I have come across recently where they have hired a salesperson, and these are organizations doing $5-10 million a year sometimes. They've hired a salesperson, usually from a large corporate background, and paid this person something like $250,000 a year base salary, which is a lot of money in anybody's language. And a couple of conversations recently where they've said, Guys stayed with us for a year, and then after about a year, they decided to say, okay, well, I'm not going to actually make any sales, and they for gracefully or not so gracefully leave, leaving you, the business owner, holding the baby. Now, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but what happens is that we waste money because we don't have a predictable system for bringing in clients, attracting them, cultivating the relationships, and then converting them effectively. And therefore, because we don't have a system, we waste money on ineffective marketing. We're constantly chasing not new leads, and we're not following up on the people effectively. And therefore, we also very often waste money and time on prospects who would never buy. So some of you know me and some of you don't. So let me give you the 10-second product history. So has this thing moved? Yep. So I have an engineering background. I'm a mechanical engineer from a very long time ago, and I spent 20 years in IT with major American vendors. I was a Unix specialist in a number of companies and head of Unix. And then I went into sales and then leadership roles. And then 25 years ago, we started our practice. Barbara Sauter and me, she's on the call there, started after the dot-com crash, where basically the company I was working with tried to get venture capital, effectively failed. And the last thing I did was had to close up shop and fire a whole bunch of people, which is not a very nice thing if you've ever had to be in that position. And so we started out basically with no track record, no clients. I knew how to sell, but I knew nothing about marketing, and I knew nothing about getting people in the door on a regular, consistent basis. And so over the years, one of the first things we did, and I'm going to talk about some of the clients that we've worked with. The first one over there is Kulzer. And Kulzer is an interesting case because when we started in business and started our practice, we watched the bank account going down. There was not enough money coming in, and we decided to go house cleaning. And one of the people I was cleaning for was the managing director of a small organization in Australia, large multinational, but small in Australia. And we got to chatting. And a couple of weeks later, I met him, put him on my newsletter list. A year went by, and I got this phone call saying, hey, Rashid, I've been reading your newsletters for a year. Can you come and help us improve our business? We worked with him for a period of time and took his business from the 3 million it was doing to 11.5 million, which is a pretty good result. But the interesting part of the story is not so much the result that we got from him, but the fact that it was a fluke that we even found him. Because if we had not gone cleaning, if I hadn't cleaned that particular person's house, none of this would have happened because we had no system to attract, connect, cultivate, and basically convert good quality clients. So without the system, results are frankly random and you're relying on luck. So the next person I'll talk about here, come on, you can do it, is the Right Property Group. And the Right Property Group we've been working with on and off for something like 20-something years. And when they first came to us, they were mortgage brokers. And we helped them move from being mortgage brokers into being property buyers. And over the years, they have become one of Australia's leading property buyer strategists to the point where Victor, the owner of the company, has basically trained most of his competition. And they are positioned so well today with some of the work that we did with them around seminars and how they actually attracted clients that they get something around 400 referrals a year from existing clients and past clients. Now, just because they get 400 referrals a year doesn't mean that they convert all of them, which I'll get to a bit later. So if we move on to Quantum, Quantum is one of Australia's leading independent, in the true sense of the word, financial planning organizations. And we worked with them over a number of years, at least I think about 10 years, where we helped them build their business, change how they thought about sales and how they position themselves. And they are now one of Australia's leading independent financial planning companies. Dragon Fire Services is an interesting one because Dylan, who owns Dragon Fire Services, basically likes really complex jobs. And we set up the whole marketing system. And I remember one day getting this phone call saying, Rashid, you're killing me. Just turn the damn tap off because the marketing is working too well. And I thought that's a good problem to have. Pixel Perfect, another interesting company because they were started by 5 of Australia's leading professional photographers who decided that they couldn't get decent prints from the work that they did to actually come out on paper. The print needed to match whatever was in the camera, whatever they captured. And so they invested at that time $500,000 on a laser printer. And we're talking something the size of a small truck. And the primary owner, Naresh, basically said, I am a color management expert and my whole shtick is technical and photographers buy because of the technical expertise that we have. And I said, no, they don't. They buy because you're doing a great job for them. And you need to move from being a technical company into a marketing and sales company. And they really resisted this at the time. And the funny story is that they were going in for one of the major photographic exhibition conferences. And I said to them, what happens if somebody doesn't like the print? Oh, we redo it. And no questions asked. We redo it. And I said, oh, okay. So do you actually tell them this? Oh, no, we don't. I said, okay, would you guarantee this in writing? And not only guarantee it in writing, but would you give them a 10% extra, like a Bunnings? Okay, if you can match it, we can't match the price, we'll give you 10% extra. Okay, let's just say that they freaked out at this one. I got them to do it, and they had a rush of people at the conference, professional photographers coming to them at the conference. And in the years that have gone past, not one person has ever called them on the guarantee. And Nadesh, a few years ago, managed to sell the business for a figure that he never thought he would get because of the marketing and sales system that we put into place. Fairmont Equities is a current client of ours, been with us something like 11, 12 years. And he is a stockbroker, and we set up his whole marketing and sales system. Now, he deals with people who have a minimum $500,000 to invest as a wholesale investor, and he gets ridiculously good returns for people. And one of the whole things that he's learned about is that being a stockbroker is fine, but unless you market yourself and you're consistently out there, business won't simply come in the door. And he spends a significant amount of money on marketing, on being on programs like Switzer, just to keep in front of people. And last but not least is Kempi. Kempi is an interesting company because they were an outlier. They are a Finnish welding company who makes state-of-the-art welding machinery. And one of the things that with Kempi was that they were all Boilermakers. They had a number of salespeople, but they were all Boilermakers. They were all tradies. They knew nothing about sales. And working with Kempi, we helped them become the second most profitable subsidiary after Germany worldwide. And they had the highest revenue month ever in the history of the company of 10 years being in Australia after working with us on National Manufacturing Week because of the work we did before the conference, during the conference, and after the conference. So let's just talk about my goal today for you. I want to provide maximum value in the time available. And obviously, I can't cover everything in depth, but I'll give you our strategic framework and how we work with people. So at the end, with your permission, I'd like to offer you a way that we could work further together. And at that point, I will offer you a 60-minute strategy session where we can review your strategy, your marketing, your sales. We can identify gaps and build a plan. There's no obligation to do anything else. It's just a way of my saying, thank you for being here. Now, if that mouse would actually move, that would be useful. So let's look at the system that we have. So everything that we do is based around clarity. And the clarity is the foundation because you need to know 3 things. You have to be really clear on the core problem you solve, who you serve, and the promise that you deliver. Because without clarity, you're going to chase the wrong prospects. You're going to say yes when they should say no, when you should say no, and you're going to waste resources doing stuff that you could not possibly fulfill with people who don't really appreciate you. But with clarity, you have a simple decision-making structure and a filter for everything that you do. So once you have a level of clarity, there's the base level over here, which is strategy. And Sun Tzu in The Art of War said, strategy without tactics is the slowest route. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. And what happens, I see time and time again, is people skip the tactics. I'm going to do LinkedIn. I'm going to do Facebook. I'm going to do AdWords. I'm going to do YouTube. I'm going to do TikTok. The problem is these are all tactics. There's no cohesion in them. And unless you have a structure, you don't know what you should be doing, where you should be doing it, and more importantly, why you should be doing it. And so one of the first things we say to people is that you need to narrow down your problem focus. And because if you focus on too many problems, what happens is that you just create confusion in the minds of your client. And a confused prospect says, okay, well, what do you actually do? You say you do this, you do this, you do this, you write about this, and this. I don't actually know what you do. And I admit that we used to fall into the same thing. I used to write about all sorts of different topics around marketing, sales, leadership, business development, etc. Getting the business to a point where you could exit it, etc. And people would say, I don't know what you actually do. Yeah. So if you can narrow it down, people will not be confused because a confused prospect won't buy. Now, if we look at strategy, there are a number of accelerators. And the first one over here is, well, come back. What did that do? Is your expertise. And your expertise is not about your credentials. It is actually about intimately knowing the issues that your clients face. It's about knowing why they have the problems that they have and what you could do to solve them. Now, here's the interesting thing is, we all have similar expertise.
Rashid, sorry, I think
Yep.
the slides are a bit small on our screens.
Is that not?
Yeah, I don't know whether you want to just move yourself out of the way a little bit and put the slide in the center of it.
I can't actually. Is that better?
Okay, well.
Is this pinned to you or is this on your screen? Just on your screen. Are you seeing me as the whole picture or are you just seeing me as one of the?
Okay, you are the whole picture in the background and then that's almost the slide is projected onto it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just need to zoom out a bit, yeah, on the graphic.
Okay, hang on. Is that better?
There you
That's
go.
right.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. It's hard to actually tell. Okay. So the first thing you have is effectively your expertise. The second thing you have is your experience. But and everybody's got very similar expertise and very similar experience. Okay. No matter what we do. The thing that differentiates us is our essence. And it could be the essence as us as an organization, our values, our beliefs. It could be the essence as us as consultants, our values and beliefs. It's who we are and the trust that we engender. Get rid of that. So the next thing we look at when we're working with somebody is the market. And the market is your niche, your industry. Because the question that you have to ask, I think I've lost my mouse again. Come on, not that hard. The market, the problem, sorry, let me start again. The market is your niche in the industry. And the thing you've got to figure out is, are their problems urgent? Are there expensive priorities that they're willing to fix? And the thing that we say to people is, they say, well, everybody could be in my market. And the reality is, everybody's not your market. The better you can segment your market, and you can have more than one, but the better you can segment your market, the easier it is for you to figure out what their problems are and how you could talk to them in a way that they would understand, that you understand what their problems are. And then once you understand what your market is and you select your market, you're looking for visibility. And visibility is how visible are you to them? Can people actually find you? Do they know that you exist? And once you have those three things down pat, you're looking to connect with people. And to connect with people is to build a database of prospective clients. So what you're looking to do is you're looking to say, okay, do I have my strategy correct? Do I know the problems that I want to solve for people? Is my market really well defined? And do I have a way of getting traffic and visibility? Because that allows me to connect with people who could be my perfect future customer and create a database of these people. So the key though is you cannot, or I strongly suggest, you do not do strategy in isolation. And so when we work with people, one of the first things we say is your clients hold the key to your growth. And the key is your clients select you because how they actually experience you. And how they experience you may not be what you think. And what they value may not be what you think they value. And that's why I advocate having regular client conversations, because those conversations unlock hidden revenue opportunities. And I'm really fond of the 80-20 rule, because the 80-20 rule normally says 20% of what you do gives you 80% of the result. But there's a twist to the 80-20 rule, and it is that 20% of what you do actually delivers 120% of the value that somebody perceives. But the bottom 20% of what you do actually subtracts value. And so the key is to find the 20% that really adds value and double down on that, which then leads me to the client success scorecard, because the client success scorecard is a process where we interview your clients. Now, this is something we do with every long-term client that we have, but we also do it as a standalone. And the reason we suggest doing this is because you will discover what you do well, where you could improve, and where the hidden revenue opportunities are. But the key is, why couldn't you do this yourself? And the answer is yes, you could. But I have two comments to make. One is, will you? Because the chances are you won't. And using a third party like me, and I will say, having done hundreds of these interviews over 20-something years, I will find out the good, the bad, and the ugly, because people will open up to me, because it's a conversation where I go into a lot of depth, and I'm an uninvolved third party, and people will always be more comfortable talking and telling the truth to an uninvolved third party. So I'll give you some examples that are reasonably recent. One is Craig is an engineer, and he's a very specialized PhD consulting engineer who, part of his business, works with other very large consulting companies who basically work on construction projects. Craig would work with these consulting companies and give them the results of what he did, but he would actually invoice the construction company, bypassing the company that actually gave him the work. And I went, this is really a bit strange. Why would you do that? When I spoke to the consulting companies, I said, well, how much of this work are you actually giving him? And they said, oh, look, maybe 10, 15%, and we're sort of looking at doing it in-house. And I said, really? Why? And they said, well, they brought up the billing issue. And I said, okay, so if we change that, Craig white labeled, and you bill your client, what would happen? Oh, we'd give him most of the work. Suffice to say, a few years later, most of these companies are giving him most of the work. So they went from about 10 to 15% to about 85 to 90% of the work. Another client of ours, John, is a leadership coach. He works with many private schools, helping the leadership team improve student learning outcomes. And when I interviewed, as part of a longer engagement, I interviewed principals of these large schools, and I had really in-depth conversations with them. And one of the things that came out was, look, the program lasted about a year. And I said, okay, do you get the results that you really want? And they said, look, we do, but it's not enough time to implement. I said, how much time would you need? 3 years. I said, are you willing to pay for it? They said, yes. We went from $23,000 one-year engagement to $75,000. Bang. Same client, but no one had actually asked the client what they wanted. And then as part of this, we actually hived off a smaller portion of what he did for smaller schools that didn't want the whole enchilada program. And someone I'm just working with now, they do weather stations where each of these weather stations are for lots, cropping, mining companies. We're talking $50,000, $60,000 a weather station plus ongoing SaaS fees of say, $10,000 to $20,000 a year. No, actually it's a month. So it's not small bickies, okay? And I said to them, what happens if one of these weather stations stop transmitting? Because you can log in via the SaaS system, you can see, but if something is critical and it stops working for whatever reason and you don't know what is the impact, well, the impact is huge. I said, what would happen if you got an alert via SMS to say, hey, we're not recording at the moment? They said that would be fantastic. Went back to the client and said, can you do that? And they said, yeah, absolutely. But we didn't even think of it. So these are small things that you can do that will basically help you increase the amount of business that you get. So if we go back to here, once you've connected with people and created a database, the goal there is to start your marketing system. Why is this? And marketing is all about positioning. And because positioning is about who knows you and what credibility you have and what people say about you when you're not in the room. And by narrowly focusing the industries that you work with, you can be positioned as the preeminent supplier in that industry. Like an orthopedic surgeon doesn't do heart transplants. Okay? So the narrower you are, the greater your reputation as an expert, the better your positioning becomes, and the easier it is to attract better clients with higher fees. So if we come back to Right Property Group, which I talked about, basically they get 400 referrals a year. Another client of ours is a financial planner. And we realized that he loved working with people moving into aged care and handling the complexities of doing so. And it is a very complex area. And so we specialized them into that area. We wrote a white paper around this area, and all of his marketing and sales went down this track. And he significantly increased his business to the point where his son has now taken over the business. But the irony with all of this is, as soon as you niche down, you actually get more business from elsewhere. So the whole key with marketing is the first thing you have to do is you have to have a message that attracts and resonates with your ideal buyer so that you can communicate the outcomes and the problems and the outcomes in the buyer's language. And once you have a message, you can then, your marketing message needs to attract them so that they come into your database. And then once you've got them as a lead, and this is where most people fall down, it is you have to cultivate, you have to educate them as to why you are the best choice. Because these days, no matter what you buy, the chances are you are going to do your research, you're going to look at reviews, you're going to look at other competitors long before you make a decision to buy. We just spent $400 on something for our solar system. And it tells us exactly how much solar is being produced, but more importantly, how much is going back into the grid, how much is being fed in on a real-time basis, which the energy company won't give you. And before I bought this, I did a significant amount of research. I looked at other systems that were out there. and looked at the website, looked at the reviews, looked at how they put the whole thing together, looked at some YouTube videos that explain the whole system, and then forked out the money. So we all do this. And if you're dealing with a large deal of any sort, especially with a corporate, people will look, and senior buyer will ask their peers, they will ask for referrals, they will ask for references, and there will be somewhere between 65, 75, 85% down the buying funnel before they want to talk to you. So it's absolutely essential that you educate them as to why you would be a good choice. And then the final stage is to basically cultivate these people. And cultivate means you need to keep in touch with them. Because if you don't keep in touch with them on a regular basis, they will forget you. There's a woman called Wendy Evans, and she wrote a great book about this. And she said Wendy worked for Saki & Saki, Thomas Cook International, Intercon Hotels, and she said that people will forget you on day 91. So even though they're a client, if somebody comes along on day 91 and they haven't heard from you, they will go with that other person if there is something that is on offer. Day 91, it is that granular. So once you've cultivated somebody, obviously you want to get them into a sales conversation. So the next phase is sales. And sales is all about helping your clients make a buying decision. You need to help them understand their problems, the root causes of those problems, and how your services deliver the outcome that they want. And without a defined sales process, you're at the mercy of how your prospects want to buy. Okay? So the sections of sales. First one should be reasonably obvious. It is diagnose. You need to have a structured discovery process that uncovers the real business impact. It maps all the stakeholders, and it quantifies the cost of inaction. Because most sales are lost because of the status quo. It's lost because of risk, because we don't feel it's good enough. The risk is too high. We don't want to move forward. And so one of the reasons for niching down into an industry is you can actually provide people with insights. And the insights say, these are the things that we've done for company X, Y, and Z. These are the ways that we help them improve. Are you noticing any of those issues? And if you are, is it worth having a conversation? And therefore, the better you know the niche, the easier it is to have that conversation. And then the last section here is value. And value comes in two forms. There's obviously the financial ROI. They're the tangibles. Can I save money? Can I save time? Can I save effort? But there's also the intangible. And very often it's the intangible that stops a deal going forward because there's risk. Somebody says, what happens if this doesn't work? Will it stop my promotion? Will it take my job? So the emotional side is incredibly important, and you need to figure this out. And you need to figure it out with everybody that could be involved in the decision, because a number of instances where we've seen, the sale was just about to close, and somebody else, maybe in finance, somebody else in HR, somebody else somewhere says, no, we don't want to do this for whatever reason. So unless you map out in great detail exactly who all the stakeholders are, and we help you do this, you could think that you're about to get the deal, and it doesn't happen. We had a client that spent a year working with this company, and the day before the deal was signed, managing director before signing says, has anybody spoken to HR? And it was an HR type system for store management. Multiple people running in a store and multiple locations. HR said, oh, we've been developing something like that. Deal gone. Year's work. And then finally, can you convert them? Do you have a process to convert these people into long-term profitable clients? Because without a conversion system that actually helps you close, and this is key because there are a lot of salespeople who are very good at opening conversations. They're very good at building relationships, building rapport. But when it comes to the crunch and they say, can you get the deal signed? They can't. And it is, interestingly enough, an innate characteristic. Some people are good at it, some people aren't. So when it comes to sales and qualification, I thought I'd just give you one of the frameworks that we teach our people, and it is the discovery process. And the acrostic is dictate. And essentially, it stands for D. D is what is the pain? Because unless somebody has a degree of pain, and you have to be specific about that, not just the outcome, but what is the thing that is stopping them getting the outcome, this sale is going to go nowhere. And once you've got that down pat, you look at the interval. How long have they had this issue? And this is a conversation that you have with people. But you need to cover all these bases off. So how long have they had the issue? What's it costing them? What is the cost of not fixing it? Is it time, money, stress, effort? And what are the second and third order implications of this? What have they done to try and fix it? Because if they haven't tried anything, are they going to do anything? Or are you basically wasting a lot of time working with somebody who doesn't actually see the value of fixing this thing because, hey, we've been doing this for 20 years and we're happy to keep doing this for 20 years and nothing is going to change. And, my salespeople aren't going to change and I'm never going to have them change. And why should I bother doing this? Okay. The A is for action. What have they tried to fix it? What is the cost of inaction? What happens if nothing changes? And the T is talking less. And this is an interesting one. I analyze a lot of sales calls. When working with me, I get people to record the sales call and I analyze. And very often I find that the ratio of talk to listen is something like 80% talk on the salesperson side, I might add, and 20% listen, where it needs to be closer to 50-50 or even 60-40, where they talk 60, you listen 40. And it is the questions that you ask that gets them to move forward. So I have listened to calls where people have talked themselves out of a deal, or where they are consultants and they are so good at what they do technically that they vomit metaphorically all over the prospect, giving them all of this information that they can't digest. And one of the keys, and this is something I learned a long time ago, when I asked people, how did this go? And they said, I need to digest. That should be a red flag, by the way. And I'd say, how long do you need to digest? And they'd say 3 days. That is a red flag, because if they need to digest, it means that you have given them too much information that is not necessarily relevant to them. And the last E is about emotions. You need to get into the emotional buy-in as to why this person is going to want to help you move the deal forward, if they're buying it themselves or whether they're part of the committee. And most sales these days go up to a committee as to why someone would want to buy. And you need to help them feel the results of the outcome. So this is the slide which basically goes the whole thing. It's just a little prettier than my scribble. So if you want to take a screenshot of that, by all means, I'll leave it up for a couple of seconds. So let's move on to something that I see a lot. There are 4 types of prospects. And if you want to increase the number of sales from your existing database, you have to realize that your existing clients are the easiest people to resell to. They are the people who already trust you. So going back to them would be 5, 10, maybe even 15 times easier to ask them what else you can do. The second easiest are past clients, assuming that they're happy with what you did. Because if you stay in contact with them, the chances are they could buy more from you. If you look at Fairmont Equities, Michael, who is the stockbroker, puts out a weekly paid stock market report. People over the years subscribe, they pay for a year, and then unsubscribe when the renewal comes up. What we realize, though, is because he keeps putting out the offer and puts out an offer on the anniversary, a significant portion of people who might have unsubscribed maybe a year, 2 years, even 5 years ago, resubscribe, repaying the money because the timing was not right at that point, but the timing is right now. So the key is the fortune is in that follow-up. And then the next slot are warm leads, obviously, where you are interacting and hopefully you are cultivating a relationship with them. And the last is cold leads who've never interacted, and they are the hardest and most expensive people to get across because that is where you need to, you basically need to do a lot of education and you need to do a lot of cultivation before they're going to come across. Now, if we look at the leaky bucket syndrome, the average conversion rate, as I said, was somewhere around 2.35 to 3%. A really good conversion might be 7 to 10. So if you can double the revenue by increasing your conversion rate, why wouldn't you? And so having a framework of the strategy plus the positioning plus the cultivation plus the conversion is the key. Now, one other thing, the fortune is actually in the follow-up. It takes 20 to 25 touches these days to close a deal. It used to take 2, maybe 3, maybe 5. People buy when they are ready, not when you need the sale. So Wendy Evans, I once got a phone call from somebody. He said, I'd read your newsletter. This is what happened to me. He said, had a client for 20 years. He delivered some stuff into their warehouse. And while he was there, he looked around and he said, oh, what's that stuff over there? And they said, oh, somebody came in. They offered this. We thought, yeah, be good. He said, I could have done that. They said, I don't know. We didn't know you could. $50,000 order went to somebody else because they didn't know that this guy could do it. So I've given you a whole slew of stuff around strategy, marketing, and sales. Now, the way I look at it right now is that you can take what I've given you and accelerate your business and do it yourself. Or you can work with me in a number of different forms to where I can have a look and see what you're doing, why you're doing it, and possibly help you increase and shave a significant amount of time off what it would take for you to get there. And as such, I'm offering a couple of things. I'm offered the 60-minute strategy blueprint, which is absolutely free, where I reveal your strategy, your marketing and sales, and we'll find gaps in hidden revenue, which will hopefully increase your revenue fast. And there's no obligation to doing anything. It's just a thank you for attending. And the second option is we can run a client success scorecard with you where we interview up to 10 of your past and existing clients, where we uncover what you do well, where you can improve, where the revenue opportunities are, and the exact language for your marketing. And we'll feed those results directly into your strategy, your marketing, and your sales process. And for some of you, you may want to work with me on a longer term basis where we look at the whole enchilada. So I'm going to take myself off mute. If you can put yourself on and just tell me what insights that you've got, what you would do differently, what you found useful out of today, that would really help me.
I'll go, Rashid, if you like.
Yes, please.
For me, it's the nurturing of the leads. And we already talked about this earlier this week, was just those nurture sequences when a lead downloads something from our website. We haven't got that in place at the moment. So we really need to ensure that we've got those touch points happening with the lead on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thanks very much for the session today. It's been quite helpful, actually. Just we've a business that's been around 22 years, as you can imagine. about 30,000 different people have used the services of our company nationwide and throughout Australia. So I think, like you say, people who know about our brand already, people who have worked with us in the past, it's a good reminder actually that the strongest place to start is with people who know us, past clients. So I think that's good. There's a lot of effort goes into looking outside of the scope of where we've worked before. So some good thinking to do there. So thanks for that. That's good.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, good. So on that note, I developed a scorecard, which I think would be quite useful. And I'm going to put the link in the chat. Come up. And it's chat. It's a predictable revenue growth quick diagnostic, and it basically goes through every one of those questions in the model, and it asks a question where you can give yourself a score of 1 to 5, and it'll give you a graphical representation of where you think you're at. And I'd certainly appreciate it if you could try it. Let me know what you think of it, because I've only just put this up, and give me some feedback on it and see how you go. Thanks, Richard. All right, if there's nothing else, I will send out a recording in the next day or so. And so it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being here. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much, Rashid.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.